Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hello, this is Robert Smigel of Canada's podcast, where we talk to the entrepreneurs who are making it happen here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with Lee Christie. Lee is a Vancouver-based engineer, entrepreneur with degrees from UBC and MIT. He invented the machine vision robotic heat spotlight and the Mondo Spider, a 1,500-pound walking machine. In 2009, Lee co-founded Misty West, a leading product engineering design firm focused on novel sensors, low-power wireless, and edge AI. Misty West recently created an AI inference and vision system called Misty Vision. Welcome, Lee, to Canada's podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Robert. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. Okay, so let's dive right into it. You're born and raised in Vancouver, I take it. Is that right?
I am. Vancouver native.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rarity these days. It's a city on the grow.
Yeah, exactly. How long have you been an entrepreneur for?
All my life, I guess. I mean, it depends on whether you count the candy store I started when I was a kid.
Next to Willy Wonka's factory.
Yeah, I went to Costco and bought those big tubs of sour keys and put them in little bags and smuggled them into my elementary school where I sold them at recess.
So you started at a young age, you kind of just stuck with it, never really been employed, and just kind of continued creating businesses your whole life?
Yeah, I mean, I used to joke that I'm unemployable, but that actually turned out to not be true. I've had a couple of jobs. I worked for Ballard Power Systems on fuel cells in Vancouver.
Okay.
That was a really fun job. I had some great, amazing colleagues and an even more amazing boss who really kind of mentored me and helped me a lot to sort of integrate into society as a feral animal.
Yeah.
And then when I was in New York, I worked for a company called Isobar. I was there for 5 years. It was a sort of more traditional, the show Mad Men. It was a little bit like that. It was like, except for it was a digital agency as opposed to a pure advertising company. And I got deeply, deeply into the world of innovation consulting.
Cool. Now, has the job experience helped you with your modern day entrepreneurial journey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no question. I mean, I'm a much better entrepreneur now that I've had some more life experience. I think all entrepreneurs at some point or another should go and try working for another company just to get a feel for what it's like when the shoe's on the other foot, so to speak. Okay. It's an important skill for sure.
Misty West, in terms of starting your company, did you need financing to do that? Or how are you currently making money in the business now? So you needed financing to build this out, or is it self-funded? Was it bootstrapped? And how are you making money?
Yeah, it was bootstrapped. I think the way to look at it is that we basically underpaid ourselves for a very, very long time. My business partner, Josh Usher in particular, just kept his expenses lean for the better part of a decade, and as the business's revenue kept growing, we could afford to pay ourselves more and more. But it wasn't until pretty recently that we got to the point where we're paying ourselves enough money to survive in Vancouver. I mean, it's really you could argue it's like a 15-year slog, basically. And that's probably the reason why there's not that many engineering consultancies out there specifically for intelligent and connected devices. And that's because it just takes the better part of a decade to get to the point where you can really afford to pay yourself anything near what you need to live in a city like Vancouver. To this day, I'm still kind of underpaid though. Like I still treat myself like I'm in startup mode, which means reinvesting as much profit into the growth of the business as possible, as opposed to paying out fat salaries.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your industry in general. What piece of knowledge or information about your industry that you could share with me that would resonate or give us some input to the general consumer that might not know what you're into?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I can answer that question at the same time as the question you asked previously. Is like, how do we make our money? The short answer is that we charge fee for service and fixed price contracts. We sell our time and we sell solutions to our clients, our customers, who are typically businesses in the mining tech vertical for the most part. But also we do have customers in the smart infrastructure industries, plural, like Industry 4.0, manufacturing 4.0, smart cities, smart construction. We kind of lump those all into the smart infrastructure category. And then the third category for us, which is facilitated through an ongoing partnership with a Canadian medical technologies company. We also have this sort of health and wellness offering where we do low power wireless sensors and specifically Zephyr Bluetooth for using a Nordic chipsets. That's sort of our such a strong skill set that we have that's applicable to more than just medical, of course. But yeah, that alone accounts for a significant percentage of our revenue. And so really, but if you really had to narrow us down to one industry, it's mostly mining tech. And then we also organize ourselves by horizontal. So I kind of mentioned already low power wireless sensors, low power wireless solutions. And then the third sort of emerging category, I would say, are vision systems, more specifically inference at the edge. So let's call it edge AI to use the buzzword. Yeah, and companies hire us to do these things. They could hire internally, they could hire freelancers, they could hire a contract manufacturer, but they tend to hire us because we've done it many, many times before. We're experts at these things, and we're highly specialized in these things. And so it's faster, better, and usually cheaper to get us to do it. And that, I think, is maybe the way to kind of think about it is we've specialized to the point where it's very hard for anyone to compete with us in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay. What advice would you give someone starting out as an entrepreneur? Imagine you were mentoring someone, they're kind of got a company and they're new to this whole thing. You've got a lot of experience. You've been doing this for a long time. Can you give me some key little tidbits of advice that you would give someone if he's across the table from you and saying, I'd like to start my own company? What would you say to him?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people think that, they look at the stats of like 1 in 10, only 1 in 10 businesses make it, or sometimes they, depending on what the industry is, sometimes like 1 in 50 or 1 in 100. And they get, I think that discourages a lot of entrepreneurship in Canada. And it's also kind of BS. Like if you're young and educated and hardworking and you put in your 60 hours a week, every week consistently, you stay away from parties, stay away from the whole scene of just hedonism or whatever, and just stay very focused on what you're doing. And you keep your expenses low, like keep your rent really, really, really low, and keep all of your lifestyle expenses super low. And if you do that and you pick a growing industry with a technology that you understand and that you're passionate about, and most importantly, if you fall in love with the problem that you're trying to solve, and you're a bit agnostic about how you solve it, your chances of success are extremely high at that point, right? Like if you have all those ingredients, I would guess that the success rate is much higher than 50%. Okay. And so that's probably the best advice I can give. The other piece of advice I can give is like, figure out really early on who your partners are or could be, who your customers are or could be, and who your competition is. Because I think common mistake we made that a lot of other companies make too is they assume that there's all these companies out there that are your competitors. And as it turns out, for us, as we focused more and more and we became more and more specialized in mining tech and smart infrastructure, and as we became more and more focused on low power wireless sensors and edge AI, what happened was all these companies that thought we were competitors with them said, oh my gosh, we're not competitors with them at all. We should be working with Misty West. They could be partners of ours. Yeah. And a significant percentage of our revenue now comes from leads from new business that's coming to us from whom we thought were former competitors. So yeah, so I think this happens with product businesses too, right? Where they try to capture early on an entire category, which makes all these other companies their competitors. It's the wrong way to go about it. Try to capture a small, narrow niche first. Use that as the sharp tip of the spear, or as some people say, your beachhead, right? Landing on the beach in Normandy, I guess is the expression. Yeah. And then expand from there. And if you do that, you'll find that you're far less likely to create a bunch of unintended competitor consequences.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about you doing business, obviously, in British Columbia. You're from there. You know the area well. You know the landscape business-wise. What are the biggest benefits for you being an entrepreneur in British Columbia? I want you to give me some of the good points about starting a company in British Columbia, but also some of the challenges you've had along the way. Can you explain? Do you have anything on both sides of the coin?
Yeah, I'll start with the challenges. I mean, wage inflation is absurd in Vancouver, right? I mean, how much you have to pay people just to live here, so they could rent an apartment is just insane. And on top of that, we have a very, very poor, historically poor emphasis on manufacturing in BC, and so the infrastructure here is just nowhere near the same as it is in Ontario or in large portions of the U.S. Let alone comparing us to Shenzhen in China. So that we sort of started at a disadvantage because of the manufacturing, because of the wage inflation. But the advantage here is that people want to live here. Surprise, surprise. People want to be close to environmental beauty, wilderness, and economic prosperity. You got mountains, you got ocean, you got trees, surfing and snowboarding all in the same area, which is pretty nuts. And so that just attracts people from all over the world that want to come live here. So the smartest, best, brightest engineers in the world, want to make Vancouver their home. And as a result, the talent pool here is extremely deep. So that's, I think, the number one advantage.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Okay, I want you to imagine you've never been to Vancouver. And the reason I'm asking this is there's a lot of immigration coming into Canada, people starting businesses, sure. A lot of entrepreneurship, very popular now. Everyone wants to be. If you were to start all over and you just moved here to Vancouver, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently than what you did before? Is there anything that you'd kind of go, you know what, if I could redo this, rethink this? You're driving down Oak Street. You just got here from the airport. You want to start a company. What's that look like?
Yeah, got it. Yeah. So I'm new to Vancouver and I want to start a company in Vancouver. I mean, I'm not sure how much I would do differently. A lot of the things I would do differently are just sort of general advice to entrepreneurs more generally, nothing to do with Vancouver. I don't think we made any real mistakes with respect to Vancouver. I think we got pretty lucky in our evolution here. And we made a lot of good choices. One thing that we did is we started out in a co-working space, which saved us a ton of money and it allowed us to scale early on. We only used as many seats or desks as we needed. We were a founding member of the Hive in Vancouver, and then we worked out of like a pretty dingy kind of derelict building for a while, and then moved to where we are now. So in terms of office space, we've gotten very lucky. Like honestly, we have an amazing office. We're super lucky about that. I would say, like, really, honestly, all the things I would do differently are all sort of more generic. Like first things first, like at the beginning of the company, we treated it like family, and we just wanted to be family so bad. We wanted to make sure we take care of everybody all the time and just never let anybody slip through the cracks. Never fire anybody, never lay anybody off. If someone had a problem, just give them infinite chances to solve their problem. That's how we kind of treated the company for the first, 7 years or so. And that was cool. Like, I think those were like really special days for us, but you can't run a scalable business that way. It doesn't work. It's not a charity. It's not a nonprofit. And as much as I would like to run a business that way and scale to a large size, I think that's where my heart is in some ways, but it just conflicts with the entire, capitalist system. And what you end up with, unfortunately, are people with a lot of problems who are no longer a good fit. And they're for whatever reason, their heart's not in it anymore, or they're having some other issue that you can't help them solve. And so I think that was probably the biggest mistake we made. We should have much, much sooner graduated to being a real business and parted ways with people with whom it just didn't make sense anymore. It was the wrong career path for them. Somehow you went on mute.
Right. So you're saying treat your company like family to a point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think you can borrow from that philosophy, like treating your company like family, I think is at the heart of it is probably a good thing. But if you start telling people that you work with is that they're like family, and then eventually push comes to shove and there's a monetary decision, a cold calculated decision where you have to part ways, they're gonna be pretty upset, right? Like, oh, you're gonna cut off a family member because of money? Like, that's just, I think it's just a recipe for disaster. And I don't think that businesses should be treated that way. I think it's unprofessional ultimately. I mean, keeping that philosophy in your heart and not saying it out loud, but treating people like family as much as you can without actually saying those words, I think is probably generally a good thing. But at the end of the day, it's got to be the right fit for both parties. And people need to have their careers nurtured. Like they can't, you can't just have it so that their career is stagnant for half a decade because they're working for a company because they don't want to leave. That's not healthy either. And so that's a major change in my mentality from day one to today. I'm a different person in that respect. And I would say that's true with across the board with partners, clients, customers, vendors. Just like, it's at the end of the day, it's a business. And like, if you want to achieve your mission and vision, you need to be laser focused on that and not get distracted by all these other people's missions and visions start to invade the zeitgeist. They start to invade the culture, the company culture. And before you know it, your company culture is hijacked by outside forces that have nothing to do with your mission and vision. And that's just not good for business. It's not good for your growth. It's not good for scaling. And most importantly, it's not good for achieving what you're trying to achieve. So that's probably the most important piece of advice I'd have for myself 10 years ago.
Okay. How do you define success and how do you celebrate success for your company?
We find success largely through building community. I think community building is at the heart of our entire sales strategy. Try to find good people to do business with, good people that we like, people we trust, people that we know have really similar values as us, and most importantly, are on a similar mission as us. I should have mentioned our core purpose, our mission and vision, if you will, if you lump it all together into one, is to help achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals by leveraging and developing intelligent and connected devices. That's at the very heart of what we do. And it's a pretty compelling mission. So a lot of engineers want to work on that. They want to make the world a better place. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are a great measure of making the world a better place. And so, I mean, if we find a bunch of people that want to do that and they're potential partners or potential customers or potential employees, we hold on to those people tightly within our community.
Yeah, I think it's very critical in any industry, especially when you have clients and employees, is that if the client's not fitting with your vision and they're tough to deal with, or they're just demanding, don't pay, you have to kind of regulate the clients as well, not just the people that work for you.
We've been pretty lucky with our clients. We haven't had to do a lot of that. The larger clients are slow moving, which means we have to kind of help them move along. And sometimes we're playing that role where we're the fast moving, nimble partner for them or vendor. But with the biggest problem with us has been with startups, like startups that can't pay, startups that basically are writing checks that they can't cash, like spending money they don't really have. And, they sign a contract with us to do a bunch of work, and then they don't actually have the money to pay us. Or they thought they were going to, like, they're going to go and raise the money, and they were pretty confident they were going to raise the money, but then they didn't successfully raise the money. So that's been the bigger problem. And we've been burned by that too many times. I said this earlier, like lessons learned that, being a bit more mercenary or being a bit more focused on just being a solid business. Like, one of the easiest things you can do is just do business deals where you're going to get paid. And if you're not sure you're going to get paid, put in legal consequences, like you continue to own the intellectual property or continue to own the results of what you produce for your client or customer. Making sure that you have something that puts you in a strong negotiating position should there be a creditor situation on the customer side or client side where they can't pay you. You want to make sure that you have something of value in that situation. In some cases, that can be a deposit. That's one way of solving that problem. And it just took us a really long time. We were just so naive in the beginning, right? We were just incredibly naive. And it just took us a very long time to realize that you need to protect yourself when working with unknown entities with an unproven track record. We still do a lot of business with startups, but they typically are Series A, Series B, and they typically give a fairly large deposit up front to make sure that we're never owed.
Yeah, we're not chasing money all the time.
Yeah, that's not a fun life to have to go around with a lead pipe chasing after debt.
Yeah, no. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your routine.
Facetiously, of course.
Yeah, talk about your routines, and entrepreneurs need to stay healthy. We need to, obviously eat right, because obviously if we're not there, if we're not performing, then the company is affected. So, what routines do you have in place throughout your day, in the morning, exercise wise? Anything that kind of keeps you motivated, balances your life, so you're not working all the time?
I'm pretty much working all the time, but I'm pretty happy about it. I think that people really don't understand. Most people, most young people in particular, don't really understand what work-life balance is. Like, I've got a wife, I got a little baby boy, I got a baby girl. She's three. Well, she's not baby anymore. 3 years old. My baby boy's 3 months old.
Wow.
I get a lot of time with my kids. Like, I'm with my kids. Whenever I'm not working, I'm with my kids. When I'm socializing with my kids. When there's a barbecue at work, I bring my kids to the barbecue at work. When I'm mowing the lawn, or maybe not mowing the lawn, but like when I'm doing yard work and stuff, I've got the baby strapped to my chest, right? Like, so I think when it comes to work-life balance, I think people kind of don't understand that, like, there are ways to combine what you do for a living in such a way that it doesn't have to feel like drudgery, right? Like, if you love what you do, you're really passionate about the problem you're trying to solve, and you get to see the results, the fruits of your labor, then at some point work and life kind of blend together a little bit. And this whole work-life separation where people are just like, oh, it's 5 p.m. I'm no longer at work. Like, don't call me, that's just not my style. And the reason why is because if I get a phone call from one of my employees at like 7 p.m., I know it's important. Like, they're calling me for a very important reason. And I'm really glad I took that call, right? And if I get a call from a client after hours, I know it's important. Like, they're not going to call me unless it's important. And so I think entrepreneurs need to understand that you're not going to have what an employee would typically call work-life balance. You're not going to have that. Or you could have that, but you'll be a much less successful entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs need to be ready to go 24/7. And I would say maybe not quite 24 hours a day, but something pretty damn close to it, right? And having that mentality, and if you set your business up right, it doesn't happen that often anyway. Like, how many times do I get interrupted on a weekend or in an evening? I mean, probably maybe once every couple of weeks it happens to me, and I'm usually able to put out the fire pretty quickly because I have people on call that I know I can call to go firefight when needed. And so, yeah, that's my answer to the like work-life balance question, is like, prepare yourself for the worst. And if you prepare yourself adequately, you won't have to deal with the worst very often.
Canada's podcast is your gateway to success in the world of entrepreneurship. Start listening today. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who are very calm because they've got systems down, they've got people in place. They can take an hour to do a podcast or whatever. They're just seem to be in a calm zone, which is good to see. Okay, let's have some fun. We got some fun questions for you, Lee. If you were doing what you do now, what would you like to do for a profession?
Oh man, I'd be an inventor, 100% for sure. In fact, I've actually told this to my employees. I've told this to my CEO. I should have maybe mentioned this at the beginning. I'm not the CEO of my own company. That's another piece of advice for entrepreneurs. Like, figure out early on if you're the one who's going to run the entire company all the time. If you have a special skill and you're really good at something, but you don't necessarily want to run the entire company, even if your skill is like essential for the growth of the company. In my case, like, I'm very growth oriented. That's kind of my main job, is building community, recruiting, finding new leads, right? Finding new technologies, exploring those new technologies, IT automation, that kind of stuff. Like, those are skill sets that are important, but like that, I don't have the most important skills to run the entire company, right? So finding someone who you think is going to be the right person to run your company long term is like probably a pretty good idea. Most entrepreneurs are not the best CEOs. And it is possible for you to be the best CEO. Absolutely, that's possible. And if that's what you want to do in life, by all means, go do it. But yeah, I would say that sort of narrows that down. But what I told my CEO, Taylor Cooper, is I said, hey, look, I want to be an inventor. I want to full-time in the lab, I don't know how many hours a week, 50 hours a week in the lab, just cranking, inventing new things. That is my dream job. And I will eventually do that when I'm a bit more financially well-heeled, so to speak. At some point in my future, I will be a full-time inventor. But Probably the next time in the next 4 years, I would imagine I'll shift over my time to about half time on being in the lab inventing things. So that's my plan.
What 2 words would you use to describe yourself and why?
2 words?
As an entrepreneur, yeah. How do you describe yourself?
Undeservedly fearless.
Okay.
Born with a complete lack of fear, born with 100% confidence. I didn't do anything to deserve it. I didn't like develop that skill. It's just purely based on, I don't know, genetics and the way I was raised by my parents. But weirdly, my siblings don't necessarily have the same. I don't think my siblings necessarily have the same fearlessness. So I don't know. Maybe it's not genetic. I have no idea. I got really lucky. Like I just have 100% confidence all the time. I'm never worried that things won't work out. I never panic. I excel
100% confidence all the time?
Yeah, pretty much. Much. It's very, very rare that let's put it this way. If I think something isn't going to work, I don't get like anxiety about it. I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to work. I'm going to be a failure and everything's going to suck. My brain just never goes down that path. I think, oh, it's not going to work, but I'll think of something better. It's like, it's always like, if something really bad's about to happen, I'm always looking at the bright side. I'm like, okay, well, that will help like shake things up this way. And then I can replace this with that. And that'll finally enable me to finally do this other thing I wanted to do. And like, there's always some positive spin on things. And I think it drives people crazy. I think the nickname for it that society uses is toxic positivity, because it really pisses other people off, right? When things are going really bad, sometimes all they want to hear from you is, oh man, that sucks. I'm really sorry. Sometimes they just want people just around you want empathy. And, that includes your business partners, that includes your employees, that includes your wife, your life partner, I should say. Sometimes the things are going bad. They just want you to say, oh man, that's horrible. I got your back no matter what. I'll support you no matter what. I'm so sorry that you're going through that. That must really suck. That's what, getting good at doing that is really important. I think, especially if you're kind of like a robotic, kind of cold-hearted, business person, you got to kind of learn those empathy skills. And certainly I would say I pride myself on the fact that I believe I have learned those skills, but it didn't come naturally to me, right? My natural tendency was, oh, it's not that bad. You're going to be fine. Right? Yeah. Don't worry so much. Everything will be okay. That was like my natural tendency. And I just had to learn over the years to not just immediately jump to that, because in my head, everything is going to be fine. So I just want other people to have a little taste of that, right? That's what I want. I want other people to have what's in my brain, which is like a very high degree of confidence that everything's going to work out just fine. We just got to keep working hard, stay focused, learn from our mistakes, use first principles based reasoning to figure out things from scratch, and do a little bit of reasoning by evidence as well. Like gather the evidence to solve your problem, gather the evidence that support your thesis, and stay focused on it and execute. As long as you have that sort of trifecta of reasoning and you're never going to give up, it's pretty hard to fail, in my opinion.
Yeah. I always like to refer to people I'm working with and things go really, really tough. I always love to say, well, here's the good news. And this is, here's the good news. And then they go, how can you possibly see any good news in this night? Then I explain it. Then by the end of the description, they're like, yeah, okay, I can see your point.
Glass half empty, glass half full, right? So seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that if I had to point to one reason why I maintain this sort of relentless optimism is I'd like to zoom out a lot and look at the trajectory of the human species. And when you do that, it paints a pretty good picture. Like if you zoom in the last 100 years or 200 years, you can find just like horrible, piece of history after piece of history, because you have the world wars, you have, famine, disease, you have some really bad things have happened, right, in the last couple hundred years. But if you really zoom out for thousands of years and you look at humans, the trajectory of the human species, we're on track to being a multi-planetary species where we will eradicate poverty, right? We will eradicate sort of needless suffering. And if you just follow the trajectory, that's the trajectory we're on. It's really easy to find hiccups in the recent hiccups that sort of negate this trajectory. Obviously people suffering from all sorts of mental illnesses that are a result, I think, of, social media, or at least unregulated social media, a result of being afraid of climate change or afraid of some other global existential threat like a pandemic or something. That's a lot of anxiety for our kids, right? And just not being able to like manage these devices in a way that makes sense, being kind of addicted to our phones, being addicted to our screens. Like these are very, very solvable, very real problems. But a lot of people look at these problems and go, oh, this has led to mass calamity, the end of, late stage capitalism, the end of Western civilization. And it's just, people just tend to talk in hyperbole because for some reason they feel like cynicism, is going to endear them to others. But if you're optimistic and you believe in the human species, well, clearly you're trying to sell me something. I can't trust you. That's sort of the cynicism that's taken deep root in society. And, in my opinion, it's very important for entrepreneurs to help play the role of, okay, yes, there are problems in the world. There are also solutions in the world. And if we stay focused on the solution and stay focused on a better future, as opposed to dwelling on the past or dwelling on the trauma, we're going to make the world a better place. And that mentality, I think, is at the very core of being an entrepreneur, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. We've all had mentors of some kind. Even though you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, we've all had mentors, or we had advice we've received from other people. Is there any advice you've received from someone, whether it be an entrepreneur, parents, whatever that is, that you can pass on to entrepreneurs throughout Canada? Something that someone's told you that resonated with you, that, you know what, I could pass that on to someone. That's something that sticks with me. Write it on your wall. I don't know. It's something that you can use or suggest. Do you have anything like that?
I do. Yeah. Actually, my favorite one was from Dr. Liliadol, my high school calculus teacher, math teacher. He said to me, if he's watching this, I'd be very stoked on that. He said to me, Lee, success is habit forming. And he said that to me when I failed. I'd had like two terms in a row of like near perfect scores in my calculus, high school calculus. And then I got into university and I just like totally, I don't know what I did. I just like got real lazy real fast. It was pretty stupid, actually. I just didn't try anymore because I'd already gotten into university, and yeah, I failed the test. And he said to me, "This is totally unacceptable. Like, you're better than this. You have no." He was hard on me. He was like, "You have no excuse here. Like, this isn't a situation where you're struggling to learn." And he's like, "You just totally." I'm not going to use the crude expression, but there's a lot of crude expressions for what I did. Right? It's like I was being lazy, and there was just no excuse for it. And he said, Lee, success is habit forming. And what he meant by that was that if you make it a habit to just take the shot on net, score the goal, and then go, okay, I don't have to score another goal now. I scored. I'm done. I've done my job. I think that sort of that feeling you get when you succeed at something and then you chill out because you're like, oh, now I can chill out because I succeeded. That is not going to make for a good entrepreneurship. You will not be a good entrepreneur if you chill out every time you score a goal.
Okay.
You got to keep going.
You got to keep going. Yeah. You can't be chilling out. Something good's happen. Okay. We're going to wrap things up. Lee, how can our listeners get hold of you? And is there anything you would like to add before you leave us today?
Yeah, I don't normally get political, and I'm not going to get too political here, but I'm going to say something about Canada's economy that I haven't said before on any publication. I think we're on the wrong track in Canada. I'm not going to blame this on any particular politician. I'm not a very political person, but I'm looking at the direction we're headed, the direction our economy is headed, in particular our productivity numbers and foreign investment numbers, and they're not good. They're really bad. Entrepreneurship numbers are dropping, which is embarrassing. And foreign investment numbers are dropping, productivity numbers are dropping. And the only way to reverse that trajectory is for Canada to be a lot more friendly to entrepreneurs, a lot more, like night and day comparison where we are right now. And so I don't know what has to change. I don't have the solutions here. I'm not a politician. I'm not an economist. I barely understand how things work at a federal level to encourage entrepreneurship. But there's one thing I can say to everyone who's listening right now is like, start learning about the economy, the Canadian economy, and what drives it forward. Start learning about what laws and rules help encourage foreign investment and help encourage entrepreneurship in Canada. We just need to do everything we can to change the trajectory. Right now, the American economy is ripping. and a Canadian economy is suffering. And that is a weird situation. That shouldn't be happening. We should be ripping alongside the US. And I don't know why that is, but if someone who's listening to this does know, please speak up and let's get moving on this. We need to solve this problem immediately.
Yeah, we've had a few episodes on that. I think we had the Tax Federation, Independent Tax Federation, and we had like 35,000 downloads, and because he's talking about brace for impact on new taxes coming. Yeah. And he just said, what's coming, and people just were, especially because we have business owners listening to this, and we had over 35,000 downloads in a matter of hours. And I right away I knew we've hit a nerve with Canadian entrepreneurs.
It's touched a nerve. Yeah. I mean, my business isn't big, right? We're only like 30 people, and we're not a huge company, but if you look at the way the laws and rules are written around things like capital gains and stuff, it's shocking. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is really bad. Like, how did this happen? It's just really, it's crazy. It's like, it's totally, some of the rules and laws that have come out, some of the changes to the system are just like, they're just going to wipe out businesses. Like, I think left, right, and center, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are just going to move to the US or whatever, because they just can't stay in business. It's crazy.
Okay. So Lee, they can get hold of you. What's the best way? Phone, email, if an entrepreneur wants to reach out to you?
LinkedIn is the best. If people want to get in touch with me, I'm very, very responsive on LinkedIn. And, I'm very easy to find on the internet more generally. And you can reach out to Misty West, contact at Misty West email, and just say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Lee Christie for yada, yada, such and such. And I'd like to get his help with yada, yada. And I'd be perfectly happy I love helping entrepreneurs, right? And I love helping people with hard problems. So don't be shy. Come reach out, ask me questions. I'll help you.
The door is open at Lee Christie.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for coming on the show. I've learned a lot about you, and I'm sure our listeners have as well. And we'll see you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much. Take care.